Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's webinar titled Harnessing the Potential of Digitalization. I'm Dan.
And I'm Drake.
And today we'll be taking you through a rather interesting webinar. Just a quick point before we jump into things. This webinar is actually being recorded for obvious reasons, but just in case it's not so obvious, given all the power cuts and internet outages and you name it, we thought it would be better to pre-record this. Having said this, we're both available on chat, so we do encourage you throughout the webinar, if you wish to engage with us or ask any questions, please feel free to do so.
Yes, please.
And we're there available to chat and answer your queries.
Yep. And today we're going to kick off by understanding and defining digital transformation. We're going to speak about and discuss the key elements and components of a digital transformation project and strategy. We're going to also discuss throughout the whole series best practices in embarking on a project of the like. We're going to also go through the challenges and the pitfalls and how to overcome them. And finally, we're going to close off with building a roadmap for you that you can take away yourselves. So Dan, let's, as I said, let's kick off with a definition. I think we all feel we know what a digital transformation is, or rather we know the word digital, we know the word transformation, but for everyone, including ourselves, let's find a more holistic, right, a more better definition for it.
That's the obvious starting point, I would say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially it's going from, or rather transforming two current trends and setups from legacy systems and so on. So we're really going from, let's say, zero to hero in the modern age. Just to give a bit more of a definition, it's essentially the process of adoption and implementation of digital technologies with the goal being implementation to increase value, improve overall processes through innovation, invention, improvement of customer experience, and efficiency. It can also be described as a change process, naturally, set in motion by digital technologies we have available to us in today's day and age, which affects an entire organization and how it operates, its culture, and ultimately its key stakeholders as well. Basically, it's a paradigm shift from traditional methods, as I mentioned, sort of from legacy and the old way of doing things that businesses are using, and an evolution process and the way, especially of the way information is stored. Moving into sort of the idea of scalability of systems, into modern trends that are more innovative, like we said, and to a large extent, future.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head with the words found to define it, right? But easy enough to define, maybe not so easy, including for ourselves, I believe, and to understand it, right? So rather than just understanding and defining it, let's get to the significance and try to understand that. So the bigger question would be, why, how is a digital transformation strategy project, whatever it is, important, significant?
Agreed. Just a quick caveat, obviously, digital transformation and digitalization are not 100% the same thing, but essentially they have huge overlaps. Transformation goes more into the process changes and so on. But let's start to define, before we go into the significance, to define what data actually is. Everyone has their own concept or brief idea of what this is, but essentially and broadly, it's information that is stored in an electronic format. Now, again, another sort of thing I'd like to mention in advance is not to confuse digitization with digitalization or digital transformation projects, right? Digitization, just for the sake of everyone's awareness, is essentially converting traditional information, be it on paper or whatever, into an electronic format, okay, which can then be used for digitalization and digital transformation.
Gotcha.
Having said this, to go back to the significance, Dre, digital transformation is obviously significant because it enables companies to transition into the world in which they can adopt a data-driven approach in terms of running and growing their businesses. To be honest, we all encounter data in our day-to-day duties, right? With a bit of understanding of this information and some applied to it, we should be able to identify where we can add value to our organization and clients alike, more importantly, to quite a large extent, using this data which is a result of the digital transformation strategy. It's important to understand that this information obviously comes from this process and where it comes from, and how it can be used, first of all, to tell us a story, right? And how it can assist us in ultimately the decision-making process on which is paramount to pushing business forward. Information is everywhere you look. In reality, it's on emails, it's stored in electronic formats, unstructured or whatever. It's on paper, you name it. People keep all sorts of manual notes.
It's in our fridges.
It's in our fridges. The key thing here is to be able to use the data from this information, okay, which is going to be brought onto the digital platform through the process of obviously capturing and storing that data, extracting it, transforming it into a usable way, and obviously at the end goal, maybe part of the project is to load that into a business intelligence solution where it will assist with sort of giving the insights and the intel that you need for the whole process.
The interactivity behind it.
Exactly. And this is all done for the purpose of driving growth and progress within an organization. It will, of course, help with timely decision-making using as close to as possible real-time information.
Yeah.
It will create efficiencies, both in terms of time, in terms of costs, and so on. It's quite a long list. And through synergizing different functions within the business and processes, of course. Ultimately, its significance also points to the fact that you are going to be using facts, right? Very relevant and recent facts to apply trend analysis. At the moment, we spend a lot of time, or rather there's a delay from information being presented to management to convert that into obviously usable information to take decisions through the journey of this transformation process, whereby you're going to be streamlining and gaining efficiencies and sort of re-engineering things. That's obviously going to help this trend analysis happen in a more sort of on your toes or on your feet fashion, right?
Yeah, and as with all business decisions, someone or something, in this case, has to drive it.
Exactly.
Let's discuss the driving forces behind going or embarking on such a project.
Okay. There are quite a few. Obviously, we'll mention a couple that I think we both feel are relevant here. So the first is going to be the appetite for growth in obviously increasing competitive markets. Businesses naturally want to grow. They want to stay ahead of the game, and to remain relevant in a competitive environment, not succumbing to competition pressures, remembering that obviously there is so much technological advancement today out there that your competitors are probably thinking about doing the same thing if you've not undergone something of the kind. So it's important to keep in mind, and this is probably one of the major driving forces to do so. I can actually mention a couple of examples.
Yes.
That we speak about quite often.
Yes. In fact, there's one very easy example that we can all relate to. Most of us over here, at least people of a certain age and up, would remember the old Nokia bricks, the
3310.
The 3310s, exactly. The ones you could throw off the Empire State Building and then they break the floor before they egg themselves. There was a time where Nokia were the number one the number one cell phone that everyone used. And it was the domestic name, like Vancouver or Biro, right? But something happened. The company struggled to stay ahead of the game. They struggled to innovate, and they lost market share. They tried to remain with the same customer base that grew older. So they did not want newer tech. Or at least one of the reasons was that, at least. And they did not stay in the game. They did not re-innovate. They didn't evolve. They stayed stagnant, right?
Yeah.
They forgot to adapt to user preferences.
Exactly. And with the dawn of the smartphones,
exactly,
they kind of lagged behind a little bit. And obviously the customers, their wants changed. When a smartphone came in, obviously the user experience was much better. So it was natural for them to shift to a smartphone, right? And Nokia failed to sort of keep up with that trend.
Similar with BlackBerry.
Just similar with BlackBerry.
Yeah,
exactly. There's the other example as well of Yahoo. We are old enough at least to remember Yahoo as one of the main search engines before Google, Bing, Edge, and all these things. Yahoo was actually one of the leading players back in 2005 and before in the online advertising market.
Yeah.
And it undervalued significantly the importance of search as a function in favor of pursuing traditional media
Yeah.
as a domain. They got comfortable where they were, high up on their pedestal, but Google came along and essentially blew them out of the
100%.
and the reason is they failed to innovate. Why? They focused more on these traditional media outlets. They neglected the customer trends and needed to improve the user experience ultimately. They failed to do. They failed to capitalize on the sheer amounts of customer data and information they have, which is exactly what Google did in turn to obviously throw them out of this. Everyone obviously knows Google nowadays. Yeah,
Exactly.
still exists, I think.
Yeah,
but
for different
I
reasons.
can't even remember the last time I clicked it. But the point is there that, essentially the lack of use of their customer data, which could have possibly blocked Google from making such gains on the market, led to the, downrise, actually.
It's actually quite sad because if you look at the way the market evolved from that moment that Yahoo started to drop and fail, they still had time to pick it back up again, as, for example, Bing did, right? It's just a matter of using data. What they had to do was, I know that sometimes someone else would beat you to it, but you still have time to recuperate. Again, take Bing as the example. And speaking about data, I want to place focus on one very important article, that came out about 6 years ago from The Economist, a very big magazine that we all know. And they had an article that was titled, "The most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data." Now, this was 6 years ago. If this was as relevant as it was back then, this is shortly before the GDPR came out, shortly before there were changing new legislation with cybersecurity and data processing and so on. So again, if it was as relevant as it was 6 years ago, now the mind boggles because we have all this.
I'm afraid it can't. It's going to get even more significant.
Exactly.
It's literally a data-driven world.
100%, yes.
No, fully agree there, Dre. One of the other driving forces, I suppose, we could drop at this point is simply the sheer increase in technologies available and the constant advancements, right? And crucially, the increase in data available. I mean, forget digital transformation for now, but look at yourself as a person. The fact that, I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself, my entire life is on my smartphone.
Yeah.
And I'm literally consenting to quite an excess for that information to be, used for improvement of the products I'm using and this sort of thing. So if you think about it, the manufacturers and the service providers have so much information that they can change into a better customer experience for me ultimately.
And the smartphones use it. In fact, look at us using and the tech we have available.
Exactly. And I think the point to take from that is obviously it's a driving force because obviously going on such a transformation where part of the process is obtaining and storing this kind of data related to your business, of course, is a huge plus, right? And having said all this, although there are costs to implement these things, these opportunities heavily outweigh the costs when you think about it.
The missed opportunities are enormous.
Yeah, you can't afford it, essentially.
So easy to capitalize on as well. It's incredible.
Yeah, let's take a common example of, I don't know, a finance function. With, it doesn't even have to be a large entity, right? But we come across it not only in Malta, but things are changing substantially now. But finance functions where they're still using old systems, where maybe it's a bit too labor intensive in terms of clerical work and that sort of thing. And there are so many more modern tools available now, whatever tool you pick. The fact that there are tools out there available on the cloud, more modern, you can log in from any device with the connection.
Instantly.
The actual processes of doing things like bank reconciliations, APIs or other connections to maybe your integrations with other systems you're using and so on. It's just a no-brainer, right? You have to adapt into this thing. And to be fair, if you don't, you're going to fall behind. Everything becomes so much more fast-paced.
You said it's a no-brainer, so it kind of goes without saying. Yet, here we are discussing the importance behind it.
Exactly.
So it's missed opportunities again.
It's missed opportunities. And I think this can take us to sort of the next step of our conversation today, right? And that is to talk a bit about the key elements and the essential components of a digital transformation strategy, right? So before you embark on a project, you always need to strategize.
Yes.
And just as a preamble to this section, I'd like to just mention that it's, of course, and I think maybe everyone's experienced this, but it's very easy to get excited about what is possible. You know, you see all the sorts of marketing and all the tools are available, and buy my tool, it will, or I don't know,
Yeah.
you know. But
You're very awful.
exactly. But people also fail to understand what it takes to get to an ultimate objective, whatever the goal may be. And it's really essential that before you embark on a digital transformation project, you obviously need to have a goal.
Yeah.
You need to have a target where you're going to get to, and obviously build a proper route on your journey, and not do this without a compass, essentially.
Yep.
And pretty much fall into that trap of doing things a bit sporadically and not structured. So lack of planning, pretty much. And I'd like to also put in a quote here, which probably everyone could also relate to, and that is that you can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been, right? So what this means is that it is absolutely vital to understand your current setup, your current processes, your current pain points and things you need to improve upon before you look at overhauling or changing them through possibly a digital transformation project.
Yes.
On that note, Dre, perhaps I could ask you this question.
Yep.
What would you say are the bare technological essentials that one must take into consideration when embarking on a digital transformation project?
Okay. I mean, you can bare essentials. Let's start with the skeleton, right? It's understanding the actual technology that's currently in place versus what you want to use. So looking at either you already have legacy systems that you need to upgrade, or you accidentally buy something that for what it is could actually be considered as legacy. So rather than thinking scalability, you're thinking robust. Software, not software, but tech in general, systems that are fit for purpose, rather than, as you mentioned, just buying a nice shiny object or getting excited about buying something that is just not what you need, just because it has a nice badge with a lovely price tag that gives the impression it's exactly what you need because it's expensive, right? Potentially moving to the cloud, right? Why would you? Depends on the infrastructure, so there's a lot of things to keep in mind. But why would you host your infrastructure yourself if you don't need something extravagant and you won't need to pay for the overheads? Rather, shift it all to the cloud, or out of the box, tick all the boxes done for you to a certain extent, and it's plug and play, right? It captures so many different things.
Cheaper option.
It could definitely be the cheaper option, yes. In fact, I want to just touch on one very quick thing before we continue. Don't always think that because the initial cost of cloud looks expensive, it means it's always going to be expensive. Or if you look at the long run and all the overheads and the stuff you need to maintain it and so on, could actually be the cheaper option. There's also the software in place that, at the end of the day, the hardware is only so good if you don't have the tools plugged into it for you to utilize and gain the value out of. So what software you're going to use, how many different bits of kit or software you're going to use. Can you find a more holistic tool that targets 10 things?
Caters for more of your needs,
exactly,
right? Rather than just buying.
Exactly. Which we techies amongst us, sorry, but we do tend to fall, myself included, we do tend to fall a bit subject to this. So you want every single tool because it's the best at it, and then you have to integrate them all in big pain.
And you're right. I mean, you cannot forget about the goal.
Yes, exactly.
Making sure you're adopting things that fit your goal.
100%. And then from a less kind of a hands-on tech point of view, but more from an administrative point of view, you've got components such as cybersecurity. As slightly ancillary, I regret to say it's seen as slightly ancillary, although it should be one of the key elements of it, and risk management, right? The term is the cyber threat landscape, but you could really and truly change that to the business threat landscape. Constantly evolving, constantly changing, very dynamic. So many things that need to be updated by the end users or the techies or whatever amongst us to take into consideration. And when you look at all these risks, what are you going to do in place? What are you going to implement to mitigate these risks, right? So having certain international standards against which you could obtain a certificate, like ISO as an example, or PCI DSS. There's also legal frameworks that can't avoid, you have to do them, but tools can do it for you. We get to the benefits in a bit afterwards. There's also the relatively new role of the CISO, these chief information security officer that could be your key person to manage everything for you, and you won't have to think of all the headaches yourself, right? So there's a lot of different things with regards to tech. This is just barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, you might have said this already, but it's something I used to ask myself, and it's good to know that a lot of these systems that you will be buying into to use already, to a large extent, have done the certifications and done the compliance in terms of regulations. So you can have peace of mind from the get-go, quite an extent that you're covered.
Yeah.
It's typically only specialized instances where you might need to go steps further, but obviously they exist. I would come across them quite often, actually.
In fact, I think our viewers would benefit from knowing that whilst having an audit being conducted on them, you could sometimes kill off the questions successfully to the auditor by simply saying, we use XYZ brand, because the brand is compliant by default.
Yeah.
It makes you compliant as a sort of cascading effect. So yeah, the benefits are enormous.
Yeah. There's also, on the technological essentials side of things, the ability to collect and store the knowledge and information gathered on your interactions with customers, with employees, with management, and the business as a whole. And basically being able to translate these into standardized insights and signals which can be used and read easily, right?
Yep.
At this point, it's also worth briefly mentioning insights, as I first mentioned. What I mean by this is that it's crucial to be able to extract meaningful information from the information you're storing, okay? And the data being collected from your customers, from your internal ops, and so on. This can be done using specific tools, of course, to actually process this information. Having said this, one would also need the right expertise and skills to do this, okay? And someone to help, or a team or whatever, to turn these results into meaningful actions at the end of the day. The whole point of going into these sorts of transformation projects is to gain something where you can action and progress and do better. If you think about it, all the good intel in the world would still mean nothing if it's not acted upon, which leads us to the next point, Ray, which relates to the people side of things.
Yes. And just touching up on the intel thing you mentioned, it's just like military. It works for them, it works for us, I guess. So, no, yes, I 100% agreed. And it's all well and good to analyze what's needed in an organization, okay? From an operations point of view, from a technology point of view, the list there is quite long. But at the end of the day, the backbone of every organization is people, all right? We can't live without them. And I know of companies that fail to acknowledge this. So I feel it's safe also to say that with people comes culture. Right.
Correct.
So a very, very, very crucial component to any strategy, not just digital transformation, but in this case, is what we're talking about here today, is the culture element of it, right? So let's be a bit different than all the other webinars and seminars and podcasts that we've seen, and actually highlight the importance, or some components rather, of the culture.
To this
Specific. 100%.
Really, we can break this down to a few points.
Yep.
Okay. The first is culture. Organizational culture and leadership is obviously paramount. Yeah. So you need to have someone who's going to lead by example, a team of people, or especially management, who will foster a culture, where the team embraces changes and they get excited for these sorts of projects. You need to be able to empower your employees as well, and get them involved. Okay, so actually being transparent with them, so that they and let them contribute to your cause, and let them have their say. So you're embarking on a project to improve the entire organization. This is going to impact your employees. Obviously, it's going to be a bit disruptive. Things are sorted. They're going to have the necessary digital skills, right? So there might have to be some upskilling and that sort of thing. So that is absolutely crucial, and we need to make sure this is being addressed as one of the components. Of course, we also need to mention the continuous improvements and iterations of things.
Of course.
You only manage to transform when you've managed to change how your people behave and how things are done in your organization. Things continuously are being improved upon, or you might need to slightly change tack a few times to get where you want to be. But this is all part of the culture side.
Seeming analogy. I like that.
Yeah, it's difficult to complete such a transformation project if there's, first of all, they're not planned and managed correctly, but especially in terms of the money side of things, the organization effort it takes from everyone who through one of these projects, and possibly the time lost if you're not careful.
Of course.
Having said this, the benefits and advantage in today's day and age make it also an almost inevitable in any business for reasons we already touched upon lately. As part of the culture and organization change as well, I think we need to mention collaboration and partnerships. Okay, so
something very often overlooked.
But let's take the SME market. Okay, in many cases, they are not going to have the right people internally to be able to manage such a project or have the relevant expertise to guide, the team on this journey to get to the goal we mentioned earlier. So it is a culture change, because you might need to actually get someone external to step in for the project, whether it's from a leadership point of things or to provide support or to help guide you along the way. That's actually a crucial part to consider.
Which is really fine. No one shouldn't be scared of it.
Yes. In many instances, it's actually outsourced, as especially from a management side of things.
Yes.
And finally, I think we need to mention sort of the organizational and operation side of things. So what's also crucial here as part of the strategy is you're leading to process optimization and automation, obviously, to as far as practicable, not to get excited about AI and things. Obviously, that's something else. But the point is, there are many ways, whether it's doing workflows or that sort of thing, where you can, change previously mundane tasks or processes to be done by your computer, basically.
Sorry, for stopping you. One of those shiny things that we spoke about before.
Exactly.
Don't let AI be your driver.
Exactly. I mean, this all falls into the business process reengineering. It's a bit of a term, but the direction is always to improve the way things are working. Obviously, we can't not mention the fact, rather the data-driven decision-making that will come about based on factual insights with less delays. As I mentioned earlier, data and information will be really available more frequently and on a more timely basis, which is going to lead to agility and flexibility. Okay, whether it's cross-functionally between your different teams, finance, marketing, operations, HR, you name it. And obviously, it's a natural change in dynamics. So your people are going to have to adapt this as well. It is absolutely crucial that this is managed from the get-go.
Yes, which is the perfect segue, I believe, into addressing not just what I feel, I think we all feel it, the elephant in the room, which is the customer experience, right? The lifeline, the bloodline to every organization out there, which really cannot be overlooked. It's very nice to say, let's build best processes in place to automate and optimize internally. But if the customers are benefiting out of it, whatever the customer is, B2B or B2C, what's kind of the point, right? So if we could speak about the key components, or arguably the most important component of the customer, how would you manage a digital transformation, and how would it impact the whole experience of a customer?
Yeah, so agreed. Many transformation projects are actually done with the end goal being to improve customer experience, to attract new customers, to retain existing ones, and so on. Having said this, there could be different goals, but this is one of the most common ones, and hopefully one of the most important ones. Without your customers, as you said, you can't grow.
Yeah.
So, by embarking on such a project, you're going to have a lot more customer information on their habits. You'll have more demographics of your customers, amongst other data, especially if, for example, you're actively gathering feedback for your customers now in a manner that's easy for them to do so, an electronic survey or this, that, and the other, which we see ourselves as consumers. What's going to be important as well is to maintain customer centricity as part of the digital transformation project. So keeping in mind how you could possibly impact them and improve their experience, improving their accessibility, whatever it is you have to offer, product or service.
Making it readily available.
Yep, readily available, more convenient to obtain, and so on. Obviously, you have to address the ever-changing customer needs, their expectations, and let's face it, their demands, especially if you're in a very competitive environment.
like Nokia we spoke about before.
like Nokia. So just making that link to the fact that you really need to make sure that you're trying to stay at the cutting edge of communicating and relating to your clients and absorbing what you can from them to be able to adapt and keep them happy. It obviously means faster response time as well in terms of any issues, with clients and so on. Enhanced self-service options, whether it's through your web shop. Nowadays we very much like to go on the website.
Yes.
Take out bash. You can actually configure things nowadays. Obviously, we're going into the web end sort of part.
Purchase side,
the side from the customer side, but it can fall part of a project, like we said. And ultimately, the customer satisfaction and the assessment of that. So just to give
building trust.
And another small example in terms of feedback, which is absolutely invaluable from your customers. You can look at how will this project impact their experience or impact how you react to their experience, right? So a simple example, probably many people have heard this, but you can have information coming in where you've done a survey for your customers, whereby the results are going to determine how loyal versus satisfied they are, right? So you can picture a y-axis of satisfaction, an x-axis of loyalty, for example. And based on the data you're gathering from the surveys, okay, ideally electronically coming into a structured format and so on, but that's
keeping it digital.
That's going into something else. The idea is that with that information, obviously, you need to use it.
Yes.
So it's pointless having that information. But once you have it there, and perhaps you're able to identify different customer demographics, you might have those who are loyal to your brand, but not particularly satisfied with the product. So for whatever reason, they're still going to and they buy. You can have the other end of things where you have customers who are not loyal by no means, but they're very satisfied with your product. It could be your product's easier to access than a door pen, whatever it may be. The point is, this information is going to be a lot more readily available rather than having to go through manual surveys or however it was done in the past. But what do you do with this then? You can say, you can go to Bob from marketing and say, hey, Bob, I have this information from the survey. We have customers sort of we've identified in different clusters. How can we get these people to become more brand loyal, right? How can we sort of move them into the regular retaining clients? And Bob might tell you, okay, maybe we can address the people who are highly satisfied but not loyal through offering them some kind of loyalty program or this. So, I'm just giving you a bit of insight into the thought process you can get to from having this information, right? And it's very easily done once you have this data through business intelligence, okay, using tools like Power BI and Tableau. Obviously, after transforming your information, but again, this is going into a whole other domain for the time being.
Well, I think all examples people can relate to very easily that encompass everything you mentioned about about customer satisfaction, customer centricity, and the whole experience is Apple and Amazon. Regardless if you're an Apple fan or if you're a Microsoft fan or an Android fan,
a bit of both.
They manage to keep their customers more than any other company I've ever seen. And people who were not Apple fans become Apple fans because of how they market, because of the data that they use.
Yeah. And how simple the experience of using an Apple hardware is.
Yes.
And that really drew me to them.
Yes.
However, Jay, I think we can move on now to the sort of the challenge side of things. Okay, we wanted to discuss this. So, obviously, transformation projects do come with their challenges, as does everything else. So, what would you say are the common challenges and roadblocks one might face in a digital transformation from your end?
Okay, I think the techies amongst us will understand this quite well, but it applies to operations in general. It's managing resistance to change and the overall issues that come up or challenges that come up with change management in general. You can have quite a lot of reluctance to it. You can have departments that fight against, not just departments, even individuals that fight against each other because they don't want to come to a common result, right? You've got big generation gaps, especially in technology, where the newer generation would want to adopt newer tech that the older generation might just not understand entirely, which would make them a bit fearful towards it. You've got general overall fear of failure. So not tech, right? We're talking change management in general here, but you've studied the change, or at least you've analyzed it, you think you've analyzed it, and without understanding the full complexities of it, you will instantly go to the what if it fails.
And big change, no matter what it is always scary.
Yes, exactly.
There's always an element of that sort of holding back feeling, but
yes,
you have to find that line where you're gonna one day have to cross.
100%. There's issues with, or let me not say issues, it sounds a bit too harsh, challenges, right? With management buy-in, with leadership, with, at the end of the day, it starts from the top and which works its way down, right? If it starts negatively from the top, you're going to expect a negative waterfall.
You're destined for failure.
100%.
We've spoken that is one of the crucial components. If that is not managed properly, okay,
you've lost it.
Stop, go back to the drawing board if you need to run and change what you need.
100%. Rather than rub off the work and throw it away.
Yeah.
Start again, right?
Yes,
there can be bottlenecks,
yeah,
like detractors, for example. I mentioned this already about opposition, people that want very, very different targets, trying to gain at the same time with the same result, but different targets, different journeys, and they're not going to see eye to eye. And you've got one of the biggest problems, not in a digital transformation change, in any change, in any organization, regardless of the country, the jurisdiction, the industry, or the size, is siloed departments.
Yes.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Like I can't believe in every organization I've helped.
Yeah, you always find those departments where they feel like it's to their own. In larger organizations more than in.
Yes.
But those are the people that have to be addressed. Those are the people that are going to hold you back.
Yep.
You have to all be pulling the same rope.
Yeah, exactly.
You cannot work away from each other. The whole point of embarking on such a project is to synergize between the departments and streamlines, right?
No, it's like a chain, right? One weak link in the chain, the whole ship will collapse.
Exactly.
It will collapse, but those at least lose its anchor.
Exactly.
And I think that you've got a really, really big challenge over here. Now that you love this challenge.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
No, and to jokes aside, to go into it, and it's with everything we see. I see it in my own daily work, and that is scope creep. Okay, it's so easy to fall into the trap, even once you've set your goal, to start veering off what you're trying to achieve. We've mentioned this shiny object syndrome, right? You might have your goal, just to keep it simple, to implement a CRM, right? A client management system or whatever in your organization. And along the way, you're getting to know about sort of nice to haves, which you can buy and add on and so on. But you risk losing scope of the big epic channel you're trying to get to. So it's so important to maintain discipline, to have someone at the head, leading this project with the goal forefront of mind at all times, and keep on track to get to where you need to be and reach your target. It doesn't mean you cannot adjust as you're moving along, right? But you really need to make sure you're not getting sidetracked or distracted rather from what you're trying to achieve. That is where you can end up in a situation where you're hemorrhaging money because you're paying unnecessary costs, you're wasting time. People are getting confused. Perhaps you need to be very careful over there. So it's important to have someone involved. And if you don't do this, pretty much you can risk not really getting anywhere, right? Something is similar to this note is the lack of expertise, and very much, which is often the case, lack of knowledge from top management and key stakeholders, which is why it might not be enough to just upskill and recruit the right talent for your people, but you actually might need to engage with someone who actually has the experience and expertise to guide you along the way. And the another challenge is actually setting up the proper support channels, whether it's outsourced or in-house. These need to be considered as part of your strategy, because it's going to become a challenge if you don't have these.
100%.
I have a few more things to say, as I know I've been talking a lot, but they're actually quite crucial. So
go for it.
In reality, the critical part of digital transformation or digitalization or whatever is not the digital side. It's the transformation side. Our world has changed dramatically over the past few decades. We can all agree and acknowledge to that. And adapting to these changes can't just happen overnight, okay? As we all appreciate that well, or simply by buying or throwing money at new technologies or collecting more data or sort of going along with the trends. Yes, it's important, but it's also paramount that a change in mindset happens in tandem with all of this, right? They go part and parcel together, as well as the people aspects we've been discussing. So making sure your business and your team are future ready.
Yep.
Okay. On this note, I actually came across a very interesting piece of information not too long ago. And silly enough, I think you actually might have referred me to it. But
All right.
but really, according to statistics by Deloitte, McKinsey, KPMG, and others, an average of 70% of digital transformation efforts fail, with the most prevailing reason being management behavior. Unbelievable. Forbes also had assessed the risk of failure in digital transformations to be 84% in a similar study for the same reasons. Why? Because really and truly, technology is only a part of the equation, 25% or so, based on what they got.
So, but I think it's also very important that people understand it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at
right?
all.
It sounds like we're being a bit harsh because at the end of the day, the reality is what it is. But if you plan things well, if you take whatever you need to take into consideration appropriately, take all the precautionary steps, it's not going to be as negative as we might be portraying it to be. Like this, what we mentioned before, the benefits kind of outweigh, right, or more rather missed opportunities. So we're going to talk about benefits in a bit.
Yes. And over above this, just to sort of continue a bit on the challenges, is obviously there's the natural fear or overcoming the fear of possibly overspending, or there might be budget constraints, which, something like this probably needs to be factored in when companies are preparing for the year ahead. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed there as well in that respect. And there's also concerns over the whole security aspect of things. Maybe I'll pass on to you a bit for that.
Sure. Before I go into any details of the challenges in cybersecurity, I want people to understand something. There was in 2021, Cisco, very famous brand for enterprise-grade networking devices, even server devices, they reported that there was a global internet traffic of 7.7 exabytes of data per day.
How many zeros is that?
I don't no idea how to count it.
Too many to count.
Way too many. I know it's 18 zeros after one. We're talking over here for people who don't understand what an exabyte is. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of gigabytes. I mean, then we're not to work up the ladder from the gigabytes all the way up to exabytes, right? 7.7 exabytes of data per day equates to 707 billion gigabytes of data in our internet traffic across the world per day, which is absolutely nuts. And this is most SMEs haven't even come close to petabytes of storage. We're still at the terabyte stage. But from a consumer point of view, which is what the data we're using, the data we're trying to gain the value out of, we're talking about all these billions of gigabytes of data, right? So the concerns with regards to cybersecurity in this regard, mainly privacy, as well as being at the top GDPR, the lovely four-letter acronym we're all so happy to hear for the last 5 years, I think it's been. There's also cybersecurity concerns, not just privacy concerns with hackers, because you're opening up your doors to data that you want to use more efficiently. So, I mean, the list is endless. I could spend hours talking over here about it, but we'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah.
I think, Dan, it's important that we try to strategize these things. And what strategies do you feel you can put in place to overcome this very difficult challenge and change?
Yep. There's not a one size fits all, obviously. It really depends on the challenge, depends on the organization, the culture that exists over there. So there's a lot that goes to it. But I think the more simpler sort of strategies here are going to be, first of all, communication and education of your people, okay? Taking sort of a listen first, talk second approach, right? Even if it's something, it could be new to you, right? As someone who might want to go on these projects. take the time to listen, without sort of panicking and intervening. Try and understand what you can. Ask questions once you've had a bit of an idea, and that will sort of help you and whoever is involved sort of come to terms with certain things and get a broader understanding of the bigger picture and what the possibilities are. I would also suggest, as a strategy to overcome this resistance, to actually practice change exercises with your teams, particularly those who will be experiencing the most changes. So those who will be impacted the most from a complete overhaul in the likes of what we're talking about. It's actually a very good strategy to make the whole process about your employees, right? To delegate to certain managers who could contribute to the cause, get them involved, be transparent about what the change is, and be very transparent about what you're trying to achieve. People feel like they're a part of this, they're going to naturally be more determined, engaged, many words, excited to go about these projects. Another strategy could be to segment your project into milestones. That's also a very good way of approaching things, where the target actually becomes more achievable, right? Essentially, you'll have tangible evidence of the progress as you're going along. Seeing the progress keeps up motivation, keeps up focus, keeps people driven, and finally assisting you in achieving the result you want to achieve. Troubleshooting along the ways, applying parallel runs of systems where you need to, but get these things on your roadmap essentially to overcome these changes.
It's essentially like gamification.
Exactly.
Like mini targets across the journey that make you feel good about reaching certain milestones.
Achievement unlock.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The older ones are very might not really understand what we're talking about.
Yeah. And as well, make sure that you're addressing trust. You're building trust with your people, with those people you're collaborating externally as well. If you have partners, you need to have trusting relationships. Open, honest. Whether it's good or bad, everyone needs to be on the same page.
Definitely.
At all times.
Definitely. And I want to say this again because I really want to avoid both of us sounding a bit too negative. It's not all negative. There are significant positives that heavily outweigh all the challenges that we mentioned. And these benefits, Dan, can you kick us off with some of them, please?
Yep. So we started with the challenges, but obviously you embark on something like this because the bigger picture is greater.
Right.
So let's touch a bit on.
Sorry for stopping. That's why we're here.
Exactly. So the benefits are obviously outweigh the cons here.
Yeah.
Now, a few obvious ones in no particular order, okay, but ones that everyone could relate to, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that going through a transformation project like this, first of all, drives growth, with the objective always being increasing profitability, increasing happiness of your staff, your customers, and so on. And this is done through efficiencies gained from the BPR, process re-engineering we mentioned earlier.
Yep.
So streamlining things, modernizing your processes and optimizing workflows, getting rid of mundane tasks, getting with the times, automating what you can. Basically pulling out the mundane things that humans are doing for you at the moment. So your staff can spend their time on more value-added activities for the business.
Higher efficiency, higher
motivation, you name it. Everything's so interlinked.
Yeah.
Obviously, the another huge benefit is going to be the insights that you get. So once you've got it right in terms of capturing that data and storing it and all that, the insights you gain out of that are valuable. Obviously, you have to act on them, like we spoke about earlier, because it's useless having them and not doing anything. But it's going to give you the ability to ask questions about your data and help you drive your decision-making process, help steer the company.
Yeah.
It could be information which is telling you need to, really veer off onto another part to hit your goals or whatever, depending on your industry, business, or whatever.
Very philosophical.
Yeah. Trend analysis becomes easier for future gain. Again, you're working with more real-time information, better information, a lot more information. So you're going to need people involved in sort of processing that for you. That's for another time.
Yeah.
Dre, there's the obvious governance side of things.
Yep, huge. Yeah, the whole GRC, the governance, risk and compliance. Big topic now. Very trending, not just because it's trending, but because it's necessary. Many seminars and webinars being held with this topic in mind. Could also tick off the boxes kind of by default.
Yeah.
So that's another huge benefit, that you could tick off GRC boxes whilst implementing a transformation. You could also hit off a transformation by ticking off the GRC boxes. Kind of works both ways.
It's sort of a fine line.
Very, yes, this is very fine.
Or rather balancing it, but making sure you're getting there. This, however, does help significantly.
Yes.
Yet there's also the fact that you're going to have, we mentioned this briefly, organize and structure data to create value.
The whole structure,
The whole
structure.
Exactly. And basically having that ready sort of to be into a business intelligence ready format. I think that's nice, what a lot of top management might see sort of or get influenced by is having, you go into the boardroom rather than going through that boring report that's pages long or whatever. As we said earlier, human beings are simple by nature. We like easy things to understand. They would much rather have, let's say, an intuitive dashboard connected to your systems, which you've now transformed and sort of structured everything, giving them that data to be able to take decisions,
Just a click away.
Just a click away. Or a few.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the big benefit is the synergization between different functions. We've touched on this before, breaking those Chinese walls or those silos. Increased customer experience. We strongly believe in this. It's absolutely crucial for you to be, the better version of your business and keep growing. Improved competitive advantage. From examples you mentioned, like with Nokia and Yahoo earlier. Having said this, it's important to acknowledge that all this technology and these improvements and so on are available to everyone.
Absolutely.
So although we're talking about improving competitive advantage, you need to remember, if you don't jump into this, your competitors might have already done this or are starting this.
Yes.
Today, obviously, it's more frequent. We get a lot more queries about these things because people have acknowledged and come to terms with that. It's a must nowadays, especially when you start looking at the competition or industry evolution and these sorts of things. It's a benefit, but it's also a must, if you know what I mean.
And it's not just for the big tech giants or in any kind of company giant in the world. Even SMEs can benefit heavily from this.
Definitely, on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Even smaller projects, obviously.
Yeah.
You could have such a big change which you need to do that the impact could be even greater, for not much of a cost.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the benefit also of employee engagement and culture, which we have seen firsthand, and obviously, if you have employees, people are happier to work and do what they do, spend that time on more value-adding processes. It's a huge benefit in thing. The list goes on. And those are the main benefits we can pick up.
Good points, guys. And then we spoke a lot about how to understand this, the definitions, the essential components, the benefits, the challenges, the everything, right? But I think now what everyone wants to hear is how to put this into some sort of a picture and build a roadmap of sorts, right? Into helping them start, kick it off. Dan, kill it.
Yep. Feel free to intervene from the security aspect.
Yeah,
but it's really important that first of all you set that goal. Okay, the business goals and where you need to be in line with the strategy in the longer term of your business.
Underline achievable goal.
Exactly, achievable goal or ambitious, but
but still achievable.
Exactly. And what's really important is that you're aligning the digital transformation initiatives you're undertaking to those goals, right? That is staying on the
Yes.
It all starts with understanding and documenting your current systems and processes and control. Relating to the code I mentioned earlier, if you don't understand where you are, how can you expect to get to where you want to be, right? You have to know what needs to be changed and all. Otherwise, it's pretty much shooting in the dark.
Yes.
Yep. You need to define clear, achievable goals and identify specific needs of your business. We've talked a lot about that. You need to make sure that you're aligning your company's strategy and how these goals support each other and the long-term objectives. So the inherent link between the technological investments, right, and the desired outcomes that you want to achieve from there. You need to make sure you are assembling a team with the right skill set and who will be responsible for the project and its implementation, or consultants who will help you with that, whatever it may be.
A super squad.
A super squad, yeah, that needs to be from the get-go part of your roadmap. Whether it's collaboration, as we've mentioned, or not, you need to make sure that your strategy focuses on your customers, taking that customer-centric approach back into your roadmap. We've been through the benefits earlier.
Yeah.
You know, prioritize your initiatives based on the potential impact and complexity that they're going to have. So even as you're progressing or as you're planning, sort of consider the quick wins or the easier wins and the lower hanging fruit, like to be able to, first of all, gain momentum on your project, demonstrate to your team that, what we're doing is valuable, so they can tangibly see the changes, right? To keep everyone motivated. Again, going to the team of getting them on board to achieve what you're trying to get to. So by making use of those milestones we mentioned earlier along your roadmap, it has a, multi-pronged effect in terms of morale, in terms of seeing the progress, the excitement for the change, and so on. You should factor in as well the investment in data management and analytics capabilities. So to be able to absorb and generate data and transform that data to move on to the insights thing we spoke about earlier, which regards to decision making, risk management and CS, cybersecurity, obviously need to be addressed. And obviously you need to plan for these ahead of time, depending on the industry you're operating in, because you might have specific laws and regulations to abide by. You'd want to make sure that the best fit technology stack fits into what you're going to be applying.
And in an effort not to sound like a broken record, cybersecurity, right? 3 is the magic number. So like to say things it's over, but no, it's so important. I can't stress it enough, and not because it's my field. Honestly, I can't stress it enough.
Agreed. I mean, with great data comes great responsibility, right?
I like that.
Okay, so you need to pilot the project as well. What do I mean by pilot? Put in fail safes, do parallel runs. I mean, if you were to change your accounting system for the sake of the argument, for God's sake, don't just jump to a new system and kill off your old one straight away.
Yeah.
Keep the new one running, test the new environment, start a slow migration, see if there's any things you have to work out before you actually jump onto the new system. If you rush that, we're going down the route of destruction from the start. So parallel runs are very important to factor into that roadmap at key stages where you need to.
People need time to learn. Different tools sometimes have different terminologies for different things. So
exactly,
it might not be as automatic for you.
So there's loads of acronyms people are going to have to learn more.
And if you work in tech, you're sick of these acronyms. Yes, 3 or 4 letter ones.
Yeah. And I think finally you need to obviously establish KPIs for the project to measure the success and the return on your investment at the end of the day, so that as you're going along, you're benchmarking, you're understanding where you are in terms of your return on investment and so on. Monitor progress and identify the pitfalls as you go along and adjust as necessary. So, it's important to have this roadmap, but I think it's important we understand really that it's not a matter of if things go wrong, it's rather when things will go wrong. Obviously, you try to limit those where you can, but the reality is things will go wrong. Necessarily huge topics, but it's never super straightforward, which is why you need to have those correct people at the end.
Right? That's why you plan. That's why you think of crisis management. And so on.
Exactly. So linking to the roadmap we discussed, maybe I can ask you sort of what would you highlight as key considerations for selecting and implementing digital technologies?
Okay, big question. There's obviously the skeleton of things, the bare bones of things, which is the hardware. Okay, the whole stack. You're working your way from the bottom up this time. You have to look at the hardware. That hardware is to host something. It's to host the data, and the software that runs the data to allows you to access it. So it's the software components in place as well. And speaking of software, both software and hardware best fit. Additions already. But don't just buy stuff for the sake of saying, look what I use, if you're not going to utilize most of it. Most tools nowadays are so feature rich to buy it because we think we need 110 different controls in them, and we use 3 of the moment, right? So
Shiny objects.
the shiny object syndrome. Thank you. Yes, nice, full circle. A very user-friendly customer interface, both for the backend, for the genuine techies running the data or managing the data, and those at the front end of things that are interfacing with the data. Integrations. I really cannot stress this enough. Why would you buy something that doesn't integrate with everything else that you have in your infrastructure? If you've already got 10 core tools that you use that are not data tools, right? Or they're not BI tools, but they utilize data, and you're going to buy a BI tool that doesn't incorporate with any of these other 10 tools, why would it do that, right? So integrations are absolutely key.
Exactly.
So there's also compliance, regulatory compliance, international standard compliance as well. That one must to consider. There's the cost.
Yes.
Not the return on investment of that cost. But if you really do it diligently, it could be pretty decent.
Exactly. And just to, on that note, we actually had a webinar recently. Our colleagues presented it on the funding schemes that are available. So it might be a good time to mention this. So we've touched upon a bit before, people might have the fear of taking the step just because of the costs it might entail. Forget for the time being the people side of the customer there. There is obviously the financial element to it, which, let's face it, could be for SMEs or certain businesses. It might not be the right time from a monetary side of things. Having said this, it's the European Union, the government, and so on are really pushing a lot to incentivize these sorts of investments. And there's actually there are loads of funding structures available, subject to certain qualifications and criteria. But to be honest, from what I've seen, it's done in such a way where it's not too complex. There are the barriers to actually getting into this funding are not too significant, and there's kind of a funding scheme for every size of business practically. So it's really important to know, and I think it's good to keep in everyone's mindset that if this was one of the hurdles keeping you back from exploring these sort of options, have a chat with anyone, have a chat with us, or whatever. Let's see what's available out there.
Yeah.
There's something, a goal that you really want to achieve, right, through a digital transformation. Chances are you could apply for some kind of funding.
Quite high chances. Yeah.
Quite high chance.
And the giant ocean of schemes and grants and incentives that there are, genuinely come reach out to us. Very useful.
And then we see this. This is, it's being pushed by, let's say the powers that be, not to give them, but that just goes to show how much investment is being made into this. Because think about it, the digital transformation from the side of the business as well, there's quite a waterfall effect then to, the public side of things and the government side of things. I don't know, to mention a very short example in my mind. In UK, unfortunately, we're not there anymore. That is the HMRC, the Inland Revenue of UK's integration to a lot of accounting softwares for filing VAT returns directly. So they are also gaining from their end as well, rather than having to do reviews and so on. It's data being pushed straight to their system. So when you think about it, this is where the world is going. Hopefully Malta will get there over the next few years. I really hope so. Yeah, but alone, this is one of the sort of in-game strategies. Dre, I don't know if there's anything to add really from your end for today. I think we've covered what we want to do, at least within the scope of the purpose of today's webinar.
We avoided scope creep.
We avoided scope. I hope we did. Now when we play back this recording, we can maybe check out.
Let's hope that we avoided scope creep.
Yeah.
No, but no, I can't, at this stage, at least I can't think of anything possibly more to add. That's not too detailed. So I think we can sort of summarize.
We can wrap up.
Yeah.
So just for everyone, a quick summary. I suppose the main points we discussed today are really, and some maybe key takeaways. You need to set that target. If you're going to embark on all these projects, it has to be goal-oriented. Set the target and obviously create a roadmap that will help you achieve that target. Make sure that before doing so, you're aware of your current setup, your current standing, your current processes, and that you fully understand them to be able to help you draft that roadmap to see what has to change. Involving your people, and your managers, whatever it needs to be, people who have heavily involved. Yeah, people who probably have more knowledge of processes than, top management. So
Yes, exactly.
they have them involved in the process.
No one's an expert on every single area of operations. So
Not at all.
pool in that knowledge.
Exactly. All the same bloody road.
Yeah, exactly.
Teamwork,
Yep.
obviously, possibly partnering up with the right people and experts to help you on
Yep.
this project. And finally, a virtue which I tend to lack sometimes is patience.
Nah, don't real.
You have to be patient with a project. You obviously have guidelines you can set as targets, but please be patient. Monitor how you're going, ROI, progress, the like, but you have to be patient. You can't just demand such changes to happen overnight. And that's something we see happening often, okay, where unfortunately someone in an organization might just grow so impatient that they're not seeing the results because they might be saving money and time invested, but these things take time.
Yes,
Link it to the milestones we said, manage that.
exactly.
As a final thing, I suppose I wanted to say is for everyone to understand, today was more of a sort of high level into the sort of process of a digitalization or digital transformation project.
Mhm.
Having said this, we will be launching a podcast series in the future where we'll deep dive into different aspects of digitalization and the transformation, be it going into how to store and transform data, how to use BI tools and what you can gain from them, specific sessions on cybersecurity, that will all be broken down into small podcasts. We feel it would be very relatable, very beneficial to our audience, and it's something we're quite excited
Yes,
to launch in the near future.
very excited. So a way to keep all of you guys as updated as possible for as long as possible.
So on that note, thanks for joining us, everyone. Hopefully we've been answering your questions coming through to the chat in the meantime, but have a great afternoon and thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.